Welcome to I've Always Wanted to Watch That, a spin-off podcast from the Average Joe's Movie Clubcast. I'm Justin. In this podcast, I get the pleasure of interviewing fellow cinephiles to discuss their love of movies along with reviewing a film at least one of us has always wanted to check out. This episode, I am welcomed by Sean Chavel.
Sean Chavel.
Very good. Who I met on Letterboxd, and we'll be talking about one of my former major blind spots in the Coen brothers filmography, the Hudsucker Proxy. That's the movie we're reviewing, right?
Yes, we are.
Very good. I've always enjoyed follow. Oh, go ahead.
The Blood Simple, Raising Arizona,
Uh-huh.
Miller's Crossing, Barty Fink, Hudsucker Proxy was their fifth film, their first big budget film.
Okay.
It was a $25 million production with advertising costs that ran $40 million, and it bombed at the box office in its first release. I was there opening weekend in 1994 to see it, and I've loved the movie from the beginning. And I think it just went sour because of the title. What's a Hudsucker Proxy? Hudsucker. And you know, it has it's a pastiche of old movies. It's trying to harken back to the Preston Sturges movies of the 40s, like Sullivan's Travels, Lady Eve, Hail the Conquering Hero. Got a bad rap in 1994 for the Coen brothers. How dare they try and pick up from Preston Sturges and try and copycat him. What's wrong with a copycat of Preston Sturges, first of all, and how is it so bad? How is it impossible that they actually outdid Preston Sturges with the Hudsucker Proxy?
That is an awesome tease. I'm really looking forward to talking with this a little later on in the show. Now, I wanted to kind of start off by saying I really enjoy following you on Letterboxd and Twitter, and I always remember the fact that we debated All That Jazz and The Wild Bunch quite a bit, because I think you're fans of those two, and wasn't so hot on them the first time.
I think we also debated The Deer Hunter, did we not?
Probably, yeah. I'm pretty notorious for that one. Yeah, now that I think about it, I had a few more hate comments in there, and I was looking at our history, because that was years ago now, like maybe 4 years ago.
I think I found you on Letterboxd about 3 years ago, and I think we started that conversation. And every once in a while, there's a new comment that comes on the Deer Hunter.
Yeah.
So there's some contrarian takes, and I don't think you loved the movie, right? You didn't love the Deer Hunter.
I was kind of ambivalent to it the first time I watched it in high school. I thought it was interesting, well shot, but then I revisited it really expecting, a solid war movie, and it was just much different. And I don't know, Cimino's kind of a gimmicky writer in my opinion. I think he makes beautiful movies, but in terms of scripts, I think it can be a little gimmicky. But I'd have to probably revisit some of his stuff. I think thinking back to it now, one of your comments was like, you rated the Heaven's Gate higher than this. How dare you?
Did I say that?
Something like that. I think there's just like a half a star difference, but
yeah. But I thought it was funny. But I think The Deer Hunter is the only Cimino film that's worked for me. I think it was a worthy Best Picture winner. Not my favorite movie of the year, but what came out? I think Days of Heaven and Strozek were my favorite movies that year, and then probably The Deer Hunter probably come in third.
There was another Vietnam movie that came out that year. Let me look that up real quick. That was 76. Coming Home. That was by
Hal Ashby.
And I was slightly disappointed by that one. It wasn't quite as the alternative Vietnam movie that year that should have been.
Neither of them were the definitive Vietnam movie. I think we weren't ready in 1978 to go vividly that reflective and vividly putting ourselves into Vietnam, and yet just a year later, I think Francis Ford Coppola did it with Apocalypse Now. What I find touching about The Deer Hunter is the homecoming, the change of heart in Robert De Niro, the crushed spirit, the way he surrenders his life in order to help his friends after the PTSD of Vietnam.
Okay.
And I think that's what was touching about it. But I probably first saw The Deer Hunter in my teens after I had already seen Full Metal Jacket and Platoon. And Deer Hunter is more of a supplementary film about Vietnam, not the definitive film about Vietnam.
Very nicely worded. All right, tell us a little bit about yourself. I saw, I think on your Facebook page, it mentioned you described yourself as a critic. Is that still the case?
That's funny. I haven't opened up my own Facebook page in a year, but I probably have. I guess it says up there on Facebook that I have a website called flickminute.com, which I stopped updating about a year ago because I think I just I just pretty much write for Letterboxer all the time. Back in the day, probably about 15 years ago, I was writing for Cinema Confidential, Valley Scene Magazine. I had just started flickminute.com. And because of marriage and life of kids, that changed my commitment over time. And I moved out of the Los Angeles scene, only to eventually move back here. But I moved out of the media journalism scene. But I once was, in LA interviewing stars like Denzel Washington, Julia Roberts, Demi Moore, Halle Berry, Tom Hanks once. So I've done all the stars at some point or another.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
I think one of my favorite junkets ever was The Dark Knight. Okay. Also, I did, Inglourious Bastards. I think Kill Bill Volume 1 was one of the first junkets I ever did.
Okay. So is that one of those deals where, like, the press are kind of lined up and they each get a turn in the room, interviewing the celebrity about the same basic questions over and over again? Is that?
Yeah, it's either they invite you into a conference room and there's rows of chairs, an aisle of chairs, and you get called on by a publicist to ask a question, and all the celebrities are behind the table, or you're in a private roundtable room with about 6 journalists, the stars there, and I remember if you're Pierce Brosnan and Julianne Moore in The Misbegotten Laws of Attraction, a movie everybody has forgotten by now, a movie star will just try and take over and talk over you and try not to answer your questions to sort of dodge embarrassment. That was an example, but it's funny. Most of the stars always that I ever met came with a pretty good. They were well prepared, and movie stars love talking about themselves, or they love talking about the industry, or love talking about their love for movies, or they're just good at talking, and they'll sort of dodge the questions. But yeah, I've gotten. I remember I interviewed like Michael Haneke for Amour. Oh, wow. Remember how deep that movie was, and he would answer the questions very, very sincerely.
Okay.
And sometimes
he's quite multilingual too. So yeah.
Denzel Washington, for instance, took Flight very, very seriously and loved all the questions that came in about that movie. And so, sometimes you'd have something like that. I don't think I ever interviewed Brad Pitt. I think even for Inglourious Bastards, I think he dodged the press junket.
Okay.
And I remember just one last anecdote. I remember when I was starting out, I was so looking forward to interviewing Dustin Hoffman for Confidence. It was a con man movie with Edward Burns and Rachel Weisz, and Dustin Hoffman was supposed to show up. And last minute, he he dodged the whole junket and didn't show up. So I don't know how that works in Hollywood. I still don't know how that works in Hollywood, how a star could just decide last minute not to show, but that was the case on that one.
Well, I guess being from the LA area, you get your really all the different probably smaller cinemas. You get, as soon as things come out, limited release, you get access to them, huh?
My biggest joy over those years when I was doing it is seeing the smaller movies that I would have never ever seen had I not been in film journalism. I mean, for instance, there was a Gus Van Sant movie called Jerry, and he also directed something later called Paranoid Park. I probably would have missed those. I think those are art film masterpieces, by the way. Okay. And I don't think I would have ever seen those if I had not been in the industry. I remember also Sarah Pauli's Take This Waltz, which was my favorite film in 2012. That is sort of swept under the radar. It was with Michelle Williams and Seth Rogen in a rare dramatic role. And that was the type of movie that you just have to look up on your own and see what it's about. I think it's probably the best movie about marriage and the fragility of marriage and the uncertainty whether or not you married the right person. That type of storyline that I had ever seen. So that remained my favorite film in 2012, but if I probably would have missed it because I think most of the public missed it because it didn't get the advertising, the publicity drive that it deserved. And so sometimes I'd see that.
You ever get sent to like Sundance or anything?
No, I got sent to New York. I got sent to, I got sent to San Francisco to George Lucas's. What was his? What was his?
Was it the Skywalker Ranch? ILM.
ILM. Yeah, I got to see the ILM studio behind the scenes there. And that was for Van Helsing. A movie where they were just trying to push the special effects, and so they were trying to impress journalists across the board with what an amazing job they were doing on it, to sort of smokescreen the fact that it wasn't a very good movie. Okay. And so they really just kind of wanted that.
Okay, interesting. And what kind of line are you still in this? Still a writer by trade, or?
No, I'm doing other work now. Okay. Yeah, I work in Malibu, California now, and I work a totally different type of service now. But my set intent is writing 25 Letterboxer reviews a month. That's my goal, is to write 25 a month.
Okay, that's a good one. I've been way behind this year.
that's the way of keeping my passion up. And I know at the beginning of this year, I wanted to go back. I'd never actually reviewed all of the Coen brothers movies before. There were so many in the past that I reviewed. So I started in January. I reviewed about 4 or 5 of them in a row. And now we've let it go. We set up this podcast today, and I decided to go through the rest of their filmography. And, of course, the Hudsucker Proxy probably remains my favorite of the ones I haven't reviewed yet. I think I just reviewed on Letterboxd Intolerable Cruelty and The Lady Killers, Oh Brother Where Art Thou. I just posted Hudsucker Proxy today. And I want to get to some of the other ones, Miller's Crossing, Burn After Reading, and A Serious Man. And that pretty much completes my mission of reviewing all of the Coen brothers movies. They are my third favorite filmmakers.
Awesome. All right. Well, I have this little movie blitz. I have several questions here just to kind of gauge your taste in movies and just get to know you a little better. So what's gonna be the next movie you watch after we're done talking?
What's the next movie that we're gonna be? Oh well, I've already looked at the other Coen brothers movies. Serious Man. I looked at Burn After Reading again, so I can't wait to post those. But what am I actually going to watch this weekend? Well, I know I want to get out to the theaters to see Jordan Peele's Nope. Yeah. That's pretty big for me. I haven't seen Redford and Jeremiah Johnson in a long time. Okay. It's been on my DVD shelf and just collecting dust, and I want to kind of clear off the dust on that and watch Jeremiah Johnson again. Sort of going through a semi-Western phase. I just watched Junior Bonner with Steve McQueen, sort of a classic in some circles. I was disappointed in it. I found some positives in it, but I wasn't absolutely in love with it. But I want to look at some. That's sort of a rodeo movie, modern Western. But I want to look at some of the other Westerns, like Jeremiah Johnson, and I want to look at Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid again. I've already watched it twice this year, and I want to watch that again. I think Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid was a movie that sort of went over my head the first time. I maybe sort of skewered expectations, and I've kind of fallen in love with it ever since.
Okay.
And so that's been one of them. And call me crazy, but I'm already watching scary movies now to prepare for my Letterboxd review writing for Halloween in October.
Okay.
So I just watched Silence of the Lambs. I just watched the Japanese film Audition. I want to watch From Hell by the Hughes brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And
is that the Jack the Ripper one?
That is the Jack the Ripper one. Okay. And while we're at it, I guess I ought to watch Time After Time again. Sort of a romance comedy / horror with Malcolm McDowell from 1979. Love that movie. It's sort of it's a hybrid of like 5-6 different genres, and it does all of them so well. Mary Steenburgen is also in it as the love interest to Malcolm McDowell's H.G. Wells. As H.G. Wells goes forward in time with Jack the Ripper to 1979 San Francisco and pursues him in modern day San Francisco. And it's a delicious fish out of water story, comedy, romance, and horror all at the same time. Suspense thriller. Time After Time. That's a great one. I can't wait to watch it again.
Next up for me, I was just randomly going through YouTube, and I ran into Joe Rogan, and I saw that he was, is it Mike Page who did Office Space and Idiocracy? Something Page.
Mike Judge.
Thank you for the correction. You've never seen Idiocracy, so I'm going to dive into that later tonight.
Idiocracy is the ugliest film I have ever loved.
Ugly and spirit, or how's it look?
It is a physically, aesthetically ugly movie, and it is hilarious. This is what the world. It's like jaw-dropping funny. How ugly the world's going to look in 500 years because we're going to grow regressively stupid, and we're going to just have no culture and zero taste. We're going to have all this technology, and it's just going to be hideous. And it's like Brave New World meets 1984 meets Beavis and Butthead.
Nice.
It is one of my favorite comedies, actually.
Where do you stand on modern satire? Like, Don't Look Up came out last year, and I had a real good time with that. I think it kind of had the strange love vibes for me, and a lot of people thought I was nuts. It's like some people are like really on this high horse these days about, I don't want to be spoken down to, but sometimes you just got to get on the level of the film.
Don't Look Up had the problem of being way too long. He didn't know when to cut. When he needed to. There are scenes that look like they should be on the cutting room floor. Or 30-second shots that should be 15-second shots. It should have been a 95-minute movie. But when Don't Look Up is working, the satire is as rich and as daring and as even sleazy good as Natural Born Killers and Dr. Strangelove. There's really good stuff in it. It was one of my 10 favorite movies of the year.
Okay.
A lot of people just felt inclined to come down on it because, I don't know, they thought they were being spoken down to. I don't understand. I mean, there's a lot of good satire in it. I think Meryl Streep's best performance of the year is sort of this crass female Trump version, if I may. And Jonah Hill just had all these one-liners that are just so crude and funny. And then you had Mark Rylance, who is one of these billionaires that doesn't know how to connect to other human beings. And he's really, really good at playing a guy that has no empathy for humanity. and who's really just trying to reap billions of dollars off of something that could kill us all. Yeah. And I thought that was quite witty. The performance is excellent. Yeah, there's so much stuff I would have cut, but you just got to take the bad with the great, and some of the material is pretty great in it. And if you haven't seen it yet, please go in it with an open mind. Don't Look Up is really worth seeing.
All right, so how often do you get to watch movies, and what's your process of reviewing them? And tell me a little bit about your Letterboxd history.
Letterboxd history, I used to write them like every time I saw a movie, I'd go immediately and write it up. When the pandemic happened, I had a lot of time on my hands. I started racking up as many movies as possible. And what happened was I got 30 or 40 movies ahead of myself. And so what I started doing is writing them on a Word document. And that way, I always had material ahead of me to post, and that's kind of how I've worked now. I've never ran out of material to post. So that's kind of how I like to do it. I like to see a movie and then write it down immediately, and then I have like 3 or 4 weeks to edit or shape the material before I post it. So I can always change my mind. And actually, one of the regrets I had this year was reviewing David Cronenberg's Crimes of the Future. I went to the theaters, went home. I wanted to kind of post my review as soon as possible to stay fresh with what was going on. I did not like the movie. I was shocked by his sort of regurgitation of his past material. And I thought there was a lot of dull spots, to be frank. And then something funny happened. The movie haunted me days after I saw it. So I posted a 2-star review, and I really regret it. I've been wanting to go back to see Crimes of the Future, and I don't know. It might be one of the rare movies of my lifetime that I change my mind on. I might flip-flop on it. Because the strong stuff, like, it's basically how people of the future like Viggo Mortensen sort of disfigure and maim themselves because they got really no other interest going on in the world, and people are so desensitized in the future, so lacking in purpose that they try and do extreme stuff to their own body in order just to pacify themselves and keep them entertained. The characters in that movie, it seems like some kind of plague happened where people are impervious to pain, so it doesn't hurt themselves if they cut off an ear or cut off a finger or maim themselves or cut their chest open. It doesn't hurt that much. And so these characters do wild and crazy stuff to their bodies. I don't know. There's a lot to unpack there. I got to see it again.
Okay. So, since you used to be in the industry, and now we have Letterboxd, and we have YouTube movie critics, and you have your Rotten Tomatoes certified folks. I mean, where do you kind of see the state of movie criticism? Is everyone a critic, or is it still some validity to the so-called pros?
As long as there's some good pros out there, they'll continue to get read. But there's so few interesting ones out there. My favorite critic's Owen Gleiberman, and I always get pissed when he's not reviewing the stuff he should be reviewing. I'm such a fan that it's like when they assign a particular movie to a different writer at Variety, I'm disappointed because I wanted Gleiberman's point of view on it. There is a very good critic who is sort of an unsung hero to me, Jeffrey Anderson for combustibles. Oh my God, I'm gonna have to look this up. I'm such a frequent user.
Do these critics have their own blog where they're blogging about everything they watch?
Yeah, he's with combustiblecelluloid.com.
Okay.
And he's one of my favorite critics, and I don't know why he's not more famous than he should be. So Jeffrey Anderson is one of my favorite critics. Owen Gleiberman is one of my favorite critics. I read RogerEbert.com, the I read them every week. Hopefully there's a writer that I agree with that I like reading, and that's great when that happens.
Okay.
Besides that, I enjoy reading. There's a lot of people on Letterboxd I enjoy reading, so I like getting other people's point of view. I love reading the new stuff, but I also love finding Letterboxd reviewers that go back and review the old stuff that I'm digging through 70s cinema. I like hearing some of the point of views on certain titles.
Nice.
Like last week, I just watched The Last Detail with Jack Nicholson from 1973. First time I'd watched it in 15 years. Okay. And it's fun. It's fun to comb through Letterboxd and see what other people are thinking about it. And I'm glad all of it's positive, because I'm very positive. I'm very high on the movie. It's a classic.
Yeah, that's a good one. I enjoyed that one as well. That's the last Ashby I watched, I believe. Okay. What's something that instantly gets you invested in a movie? Whether it be the genre, the topic, a certain actor, actress. What's something that instantly hooks you in?
Of course, I'm going to have my favorite actors and actresses. I'm going to watch Pacino, Hoffman, De Niro. I'd like to see Michael Fassbender going back to good work. I love seeing Julianne Moore and Natalie Portman and Meryl Streep and Tilda Swinton. But usually I'm a director's guy. I love watching directors that I'm very familiar with or that are up and coming that I'm high on. And it usually comes down to that. I am always looking for great new talent, and every year there seems to be a favorite movie of mine that makes my top 10 by a director that's pretty new, or it's their first film that I've liked by them, and I mean that's always fun. And then there's certain genres. I love every genre, but probably science fiction and drama are my favorite. It's really hard to find a good comedy. I think also, if you don't mind me mentioning, comedy is becoming rarer and rarer to find a good one in the last 10 years. That's kind of sad. So you have to look at older comedies because we're just not finding good ones now.
I agree with that for sure.
But Don't Look Up was one. So.
That makes me think. So, as a director's guy, was there any acclaimed director you kind of got a late start with that it took you a while to get in their groove? For me, it was De Palma. Like, I hadn't seen much De Palma. I watched Sisters, I believe it was, and thought it was a little corny. But as I was going through, I kind of was seeing more of his like Hitchcock influences, and then by the time I got to Carrie, I was like, yeah, De Palma. So.
Carrie is my favorite De Palma movie. I think it just misses my top 100. And I think with De Palma, there's so many De Palma movies I do love. So it's Carrie, it's Casualties of War, Carlito's Way, Femme Fatale, Blowouts, Body Double, Scarface, Mission Impossible. Yeah. But the important thing when it comes to De Palma is it's the collective work that he's done accumulatively. You sort of have to watch a bunch of movies by him to really catch on the groove of what's so great about him. But yeah, you know what? Michael Haneke.
Okay.
I was very cold on him. I'm just starting to go back through his work. For instance, I saw The Piano Teacher 15 years ago. I wrote it down as a marginal 3-star movie, like really tough to get through, interesting.
Sure.
Saw it again this year, wrote up a 4-star review. Yeah, really. It really shook me up. And it's great to see any type of movie these days that does shake you up and take you out of your familiar element. And as much of a masterpiece I thought of it the first time, it was probably more of a knockout the second time. I watched that again this year. So yeah, there was Haneke. I have to admit, David Cronenberg was another one. So I just knocked Crimes of the Future, but I remember seeing Videodrome years ago, and I'm like, I don't like this. I don't like it at all. But eventually I would find Cronenberg's The Fly and Cronenberg's A History of Violence, and I think Crash was a movie I had to see twice. That's one of his best films. Okay. And it's a great original novel, by the way, by J.G. Ballard. and Cronenberg really couldn't adapt it faithfully to the T when he made Crash, but it's amazing what he did do with the adaptation. It's really great to read the book and see the movie at the same time. And I'm trying to think of some other directors like it took me time to latch onto, but I do know that feeling.
Okay. Can you remember the first movie you saw in the theater?
Supposedly it was Grease, and I was too young to remember it.
Okay.
No, the first movie I really remember is my mother took me to an R-rated movie, National Lampoon's Vacation, Chevy Chase, 1984.
Okay. Nice.
And and even as a 5-year-old, I thought it was funny.
Okay. Yeah, just remove that as my Letterboxd banner. I like to always throw up a few vacation movies on whenever this time of year, whenever traveling and so forth. So yeah, classic right there. It's awesome.
Yeah, it is. I noticed that it was on your banner for a while. I really do think it's one of the funniest movies of the '80s, and it's the right kind. It's the right amount of crude. Mm-hmm. It's a really good work. Yeah.
And the crude kind of sneaks up on you in that one because you're not really expecting it from this family vacation movie, and then all of a sudden they would come upon the aunt and she's dead, and they strap her to the roof.
But at the same time, they're recognizable family members. I mean, you can imagine before Chevy Chase became this caricature of himself, he was actually very funny at playing real as a desperate dad. And I think that was pretty great of him. To go back to your previous question, I think Terry Gilliam was another filmmaker that it took me time to warm up to, and Robert Altman was another filmmaker it took me time to warm up to.
True.
Okay. Sometimes the first film you experience by them is the wrong film. Mm-hmm. What's great about Letterboxd is getting ideas of what your intro to a certain director should be. Mm-hmm. If you know what I mean.
It's funny to be subscribed to some of the Criterion Facebook groups, and the millionth time you see, hey, where should I start with Tarkovsky? It's like, okay, well, let's do this again.
Yeah, and that's a tough one too. I would just go right into Stalker. That's just my opinion, but it's a tough one.
Not a bad pick at all. All right, who's your favorite director, and what's their best and worst film?
Favorite director is... My favorite three directors are Stanley Kubrick, Martin Scorsese, and the Coen brothers.
Nice.
So Stanley Kubrick, best film is 2001: A Space Odyssey. Let me just throw in there Barry Lyndon as my second favorite, and The Shining as my third favorite. Okay. And his worst film is Fear and Desire. It's every bit as inept as you'd think it would be, but once in a while he comes up with a good camera shots that justifies his potential ability. His potential ability is there. It's just a misbegotten movie, and it's an anti-war film. And there's very few images that really do stick with you after you're done with Fear and Desire. So,
I actually found Killer's Kiss was surprisingly good for an early noir. I was surprised whenever I visited that one.
Not great, but worth watching if you're a Kubrick aficionado. There's some really good stuff, and it's amazing. We're talking, what is that, 1955 or 19? I want to say it's 1955. And Kubrick is putting the camera inside the boxing ring, because most of the time when you had a boxing film like Champion with Kirk Douglas, directors were putting the camera outside of the rope. Kubrick got right in there and put his camera right inside the action of the ring, and that's pretty incredible for its time. Nice. Yeah, there's I think there's sort of a chase and fight inside a mannequin, inside in the climax, a mannequin warehouse, that's and right. his shadowing, the silhouettes of the lighting is really, really good for that time.
Agreed. What's the first movie you would say that it just really clicked, and all of a sudden film became more of an art, opposed to, just the entertainment?
It was probably 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Okay. How old were you?
I was 8 years old.
Oh,
I
wow.
thought, oh my God, if this is what classic movies can do, then I need to watch a whole lot more of these type of movies. Only to realize years later that no other movie really matches up in 2001: A Space Odyssey. It just doesn't
Mm-hmm.
happen. There's a certain grandeur, the majesty of it, just the classical art of the cutting, the slow reveal of what it's all trying to say,
Mm-hmm.
the sort of the slightly untouchable allegory of what it's really going after. It makes you think for years of what it's really trying to say, and
Mm-hmm.
it never really does let you go. But it's funny that Annie Hall would also be one of those movies where I looked at and like, oh my God, this is why Woody Allen is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
I hate bringing him up because I actually don't watch Woody Allen movies anymore because of all the controversy regarding him. But
Okay.
I also cannot deny that when I watched Annie Hall, it's like, oh my God, this is how a rom-com can be edited and put together and go backwards and slide backwards and forwards in time
Mm-hmm.
and have all these little asides. I didn't know a comedy could do that. I mean, what can I say? Annie Hall is pretty great. I can't help it.
Well said. Now I noticed a few political things on your Twitter page. Any favorite political movies?
Favorite political movies? God, I mean, Oliver Stone is so political.
Sure.
I mean, yeah, Born on the 4th of July is a war film, but it's also about how we lied to our young soldiers about what was going on over there and what their expectations are supposed to be and how
Mm-hmm.
they're going to be taken care of after the war. I'm sorry, but it's a genius movie. Just how forgotten the veteran soldier is once he is returned home. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that is one of my favorite political movies. Do you have a favorite political movie, Justin?
I always go to Wag the Dog. I love
Wag the
how
Dog.
yeah,
Yeah.
Was it Dustin Hoffman in there and yeah,
They
just
they stage a fake war with Albania to sort of skirt
mm-hmm.
the issues at home about the president's possible molestation of a Firefly girl. And Dustin Hoffman is this honcho Hollywood producer, one of his best performances, by the way, who manufactures all the behind the scenes stuff in order to skirt the reality, wag the dog here in America. So
yeah, that
we're
one really revealed
yeah.
just how scary politics and corrupt it actually is. So yeah, that one definitely shook me even back when I watched it in high school and revisited it just a couple years ago, and still great.
Yeah, that's one of the best ones. Natural Born Killers is really important, just about the importance of media manipulation, about
Mm-hmm.
violence for profit, violence for entertainment profit.
Mm-hmm.
Doctor Strangelove by Kubrick. Um, I don't know why this just shot in my head, but Jonathan Demi's The Manchurian Candidate. There's so many powerful images in that one, and yes, I
Mm-hmm.
am choosing that over the original. Uh,
Okay.
there's so much. I was just thinking, there's so much good material in there about when the soldiers. You actually see Denzel being brainwashed, about
Mm-hmm.
how we're taking our soldiers and brainwashing them. That's pretty scary but fascinating sci-fi political material. Great
I
stuff.
really enjoyed the first couple seasons of House of Cards, especially this one episode where it really got into military base bracking and the wheeling and dealing that goes on behind closed doors there. And I thought that was really well done as well.
I have never seen House of Cards.
Okay. Um, you stopped watching Kevin Spacey movies too, I imagine?
Oh yeah, I occasionally catch an old one with Kevin Spacey. I
Mm-hmm.
watched Glengarry Glen Ross, and everybody's great in that movie. I just watched
Yeah.
that recently. I don't watch series too much. I
Okay.
I
Yeah,
do
me
watch
neither. But that one stood out for sure.
Black Mirror is the only thing that's blown me away in recent years.
Okay.
That's just a sci-fi nut in me. And there's actually some pretty good political episodes in Black Mirror if you go through it.
Okay. Any movie pet peeves? What instantly will turn you off about a movie? And will you just turn it off, or will you kind of hate watch it from then on out?
Give me a look at David Spade, and I got to turn it off. One look at him, I got to turn it off. There are some movie brats out there that don't deserve to be starring in movies, and I can't believe they make it into movies.
Okay.
Like I'm not a Tara Reid fan, for instance, and she's a flash in the pan now because we don't really think about her.
Yeah.
But
I recently rewatched Van Wilder, and she's just kind of there.
Yeah, she just doesn't really get the joke, does she? And so, what I would say my most recent pet peeve there have been some good Netflix movies. There have been, but there are also these Netflix movies that are overlit, overbright, that have no sense of cinematography, that look like a TV show, that have no sense of cinematic flair to it. And that really bothers me. The lack of cinematography as an art, that the over-digitalized photography of some of them when they're not shot on film anymore. But the whole aesthetic of being over bright, the way they light these movies these days, it really bothers them to me.
Okay. Is there a film that you really enjoyed but you swear you'll never watch again?
I know sometimes that prompts an answer like Requiem for a Dream, but once every 10 years I do watch it again.
Yeah.
I think I watched Haneke's Amour this last time, and I don't know if I'm ever going to watch it again. I've seen it twice now, and that could be it for me. Okay. It's just something that will live in forever inside me anyway. I don't need to revisit it. One of the more interesting things that's ever happened to me is 2009. I would say Inglourious Basterds was the best film of the year. The second best film of the year, the Japanese film Departures. Nothing intense about it, just a very touching movie about death and letting go. It involves a character who works in a mortuary and has to put on a peaceful mortuary for the funeral, has to prepare a good funeral for the people that are coming. And so it's his growth in how he finds fulfillment in his job. And it's a beautiful movie, but somehow I've never wanted to rewatch it. I think I don't want it to taint or soil my memory of how beautiful it was the first time. I'm scared that I'm not going to love it as much as I did the first time, so I have not seen it since 2009. So Departures is one of those. I don't know if I'll ever get to it again. I don't know.
Okay. Do you own any movies? Do you have any collectible ones or anything?
Oh yeah, I'm always collecting movies. I'm adding new ones. When I can't find something on streaming or I can't find it on Netflix, I can't even rent it. I do find myself eBaying or buying stuff off of Amazon, the rare titles that I can't find. I know this year I gave up trying to find a good copy of Strange Days, so I decided to go out and get an eBay copy of it. I also bought Kids by Larry Clark. I haven't watched it yet. I went out of my way to buy a copy of Robert Altman's The Gingerbread Man, only to find out I didn't like it. I think it's the worst John Grisham story that's been adapted to do a story. It still has the Altman-esque aesthetic to it, but story-wise, it's a fail for me. And so I still do that. And then, of course, I still get into collecting movies I adore. I know I recently bought Once Upon a Time in the West and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. I enjoyed a few Westerns over 4th of July weekend. I did that recently. I bought the Criterion Collection edition of A Hard Day's Night, the Beatles documentary.
Get the 4K?
What is it called? Yeah, I think so. What's it called? A Hard Day's Night, is it?
A Hard Day's Night, I believe.
A Hard Day, yeah. So I haven't watched that since I was a kid, so I'm looking forward to watching that again. I got the Red Shoes on Criterion.
Nice.
So I'm always collecting.
Sweet. So on a personal or professional level, what film do you relate to the most?
Joe versus the Volcano just popped into my head.
Oh, okay. That's
So
a
did
fun one.
So did Sorcerer. So let's talk about them for a couple minutes.
Okay.
Uh, Joe versus the Volcano is sort of the kind of sweet-natured movie fantasy
Uh-huh.
that really takes some visual risk and
Especially in that opening.
goes off for an adventure. Though it starts off a bit gloomy intentionally, and it's very
Mm-hmm.
funny the way it starts off very gloomy
Yeah.
before he decides to reinvent his life. And I always find those type of stories very touching about a person that's been living the wrong way for most of their life, and they decide to reinvent themselves and go off on an adventure that will change them, or uh, or soar their hearts and put their heart soars after they take on a new adventure or new risk, something they try to do something to their lives they haven't done before. And I love that kind of story.
Nice.
And it's beautiful chemistry. I think it was the best chemistry Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan ever did, even though they made 3 movies together. Joe versus Volcano is my favorite. It's a very whimsical movie. It came out before there was ever a Wes Anderson. And it's not Wes Anderson-like, except for the fact that it is very whimsical, has all these wonderful passages in the movie. It just breathes and comes to life, even though it's complete fantasy. And then I
Sorcerer,
love
huh?
it. I love an adventure movie like Sorcerer because
Okay.
I am the type of guy. If I was in that situation, I would be that sort of that dead serious Roy Scheider type of guy. I'm a Roy Scheider type of guy. I think. I also
Okay.
like I love all that jazz. Um, Roy Scheider is kind of my type of guy for some reason.
Huh.
And he goes to South America. He has to deliver like what is it?
Nitroglycerin, right?
Nitroglycerin in order to put out these fire bombs that have the
They're
oil wells have blown
yeah,
up.
oil wells on fire. Yep, that's right.
Oil wells are on fire, so they have to. What is it called? They have to clamp the fire by igniting nitroglycerin on it. So he has to
Mm-hmm.
travel through these jungles, through the jungle of South America, in order to deliver the nitroglycerin. And it's one hell of a scary adventure, and it's thick jungle, and there's so much weather that's involved. And remember
Mm-hmm.
that rainstorm? They have to like travel over the bridge, and this
Mm-hmm.
is horrible rainstorm. And I just like the intensity of Roy Scheider, so that's why I get. That's to answer your question. I love the intensity of Roy Scheider.
Awesome, cool answers. A favorite movie you like to recommend?
My favorite movie to recommend is my all-time favorite movie, Walkabout,
Okay.
the 1971 Australian movie.
Peter
Uh,
Weir.
no, it's by Nicholas Roeg.
Rogue. That's right.
It's actually a British movie set in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
It's about 2 children. Jenny Agutter is an older teen and her younger brother.
Mm-hmm.
They go on a car trip to the outback. The father, this is rated G, and yet the father tries to shoot the kids
Yeah.
in one of the earliest scenes, and the kids get away. The father commits suicide, and these kids are left on their own to try and survive in the outback. And they run out of food and water very quickly, only to be saved by an Aboriginal boy who's 16 years old and is out on the earth per se to claim his manhood.
Right.
And he finds this young girl and the boy, and this Aboriginal boy falls in love with Jenny Agutter, but he doesn't know how to communicate the message that he's in love with her because there's a communication gap between
Right.
language. There's a language barrier. And it's all about the hastiness of trying to get back home. She wants to return home, and yet, of course, we know how movies turn out. She is going to get back home. They will be safe, and yet years later, she has nothing but fond reminiscences about all of her time since she wishes she was back in the outback.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that movie as well. Had some great cinematography, and I love the contrast he will show between the wildness of the outback compared to, when they do get back to society, and there's that swimming pool right next to the beach and stuff. So, yeah, great movie. I should revisit that one. All right.
There's also a 1983 Japanese movie called The Ballad of Narayana. If you want to talk about great foreign cinema, this is the type of cultural story.
The first one or the second one?
The second one, the 1983 version.
Okay.
Set in the 19th century wilderness and the high altitude of the mountains. The people there are very desperate, and because there's always a shortage of food. And unfortunately, they feel like the elders are obsolete at a certain point, and they have to do away with them. And that's one of my favorite recommendations, Ballad of Narayana.
Yeah, I recently saw that one too. That's very raw humanity on display there. Yeah, gorgeous movie. What's a film that gets too much hate?
Film that gets too much hate. For some reason, Jackie with Natalie Portman just popped into my head.
Wow. Okay.
I think somehow it gets a lot of hate, or she gets a lot of hate directed at her because she has this Philly accent. Because she was Jackie Kennedy, she had to put up this facade of good manners and sort of a womanly. I don't want to say coy, but a woman back then even had to pretend like she was subservient to the president or to the state, and a woman like that had to put out her own vulnerability. So Natalie Portman gets a lot of hate for Jackie, and I think it's one of the greatest performances, actually, because it's truthful that she has to be this certain woman that everybody expects her to be.
Yeah, that was, I really was taken aback by that movie. I enjoyed it quite a bit. And Spencer, both amazing female studies there from Women in Power. Okay. Do you prefer a movie to be a little more subtle or a little bit pack more of a punch? Or maybe somewhere in between?
Well, when I think of subtlety, I think of the cinema of ennui, of Italian and French and all that depressive cinema we saw in the 60s and 70s. Once you see La Ventura, it's like enough for me. Give me a pack a punch. Pack a punch. Give me a jolt. I want to feel some pulse in a movie.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
The whole thing of austerity, it gets old after a while. I'm sorry, but there are some great movies about quiet and quietude, but it's got to be really done well, or otherwise it doesn't really turn me on.
Okay. Let's see here. First underrated horror movie that comes to mind.
Annihilation from 2018, my favorite movie. Also with Natalie Portman.
Yeah.
There we go. Alex Garland is one of the most exciting filmmakers we have. I think he's 3 for 3 in my book. Men sort of, it doesn't really come together at the end, and the message of the movie comes together, but what it's trying to do doesn't completely come together. But Annihilation and Ex Machina were both my favorite movies of their respective year. I think he's a brilliant filmmaker with so much cerebral sci-fi ideas. So Annihilation was also, I think, the scariest thing I'd seen in like 10 years.
Okay. Yeah, that climax is something else. And Men is coming up on my watch list pretty soon, so I'm excited to see that. Heard some mixed things, so I always like to weigh in when that's the case.
There's too much interesting visual dynamics happening in Men to just toss it away. It is good enough. I think it works more in the abstract. And like I said, it doesn't literally come together at the end, but the message does, and I recommend Men.
Cool. What's a movie that's always going to make you tear up and, really get a little sappy?
The
I have to narrate the fact that he gave me a big old eye roll on this one, so I can't wait to hear what he says.
I was about to answer Star 80 because that really breaks tears when I see it, but it doesn't make me sappy. The Elephant Man is another one that sort of tears me up inside. I cry almost every single time.
Okay, well, it's not the sappy.
It's not sappy, but it's the sappy. Yeah, but Elephant Man destroys me every time I see it.
Okay, yeah, that's where I'm getting at.
You know what?
Good main
David Lynch's other movie, The Straight Story, is a very touching movie about an old man trying to reconnect with his brother. And I get a little teary-eyed every time I see that. I get a little sappy when I see that.
Okay, love it. All right, what would be the dream film that you would make? What would be a story that you'd want to see on the big screen that came out of that you crafted?
I have always said that I wish I had written the 1981 film Atlantic City with Burt Lancaster and Susan Sarandon. That is the type of story that's totally up my alley, about a former mobster that has fallen off of the scene, and he's an aging, desperate old man who has sort of lost any connection with his youth. And he stumbles into a lucky drug deal that's going to make him a lot of money, make him feel important again, and gives him an opportunity to fall in love with Susan Sarandon, even though there's an age gap. I think that's a beautifully written movie. I wish I had written something like that. I wish I could write something as good as Sorcerer. I wish I could write something as good as Blue Velvet. But those are the type of stories. I love some kind of crime or thriller element like that.
Okay. And last one. Any film watching goals for the rest of the year?
I want to revisit every terrifying movie I've ever seen for Halloween this year.
Nice.
Which even means the 1974 Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So I'm gonna have to gear up and get ready for that one. And I already saw Audition. I want to probably watch The Vanishing again from 1988, the Dutch film.
Good
and beyond that, I have yet to review Barry Lyndon and Full Metal Jacket for Letterboxd, and
that'll be fun.
And Eyes Wide Shut. So I really want to do that by December.
Cool. Well, power to you. I hope you get those accomplished. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back talking about Hudsucker Proxy, and we'll see if a circle really is the secret to climbing that corporate ladder right after this. Wearing Hudsucker was never an easy man to figure out. He built his company with his bare hands. Every step he took was a step up, except, of course, this last one. All right. The Hudsucker Proxy is a 1994 comedy film. It's from the Coen brothers. Sam Raimi co-wrote the script and served as a second unit director. I thought that was pretty interesting. The film stars Tim Robbins as a naive but ambitious business school graduate who is installed as president of a manufacturing company. It also stars Jennifer Jason Leigh as a newspaper reporter, Paul Newman as the company director who hires this graduate for a stock scam. All right. For this show, I like to dig into some of the IMDb and that synopsis courtesy of Wikipedia. Some of the IMDb factoids. So you might have some of your own, so feel free to throw in some as well. Let's see. Joel Silver wanted Tom Cruise to be Norval, but the Coens insisted on Tim Robbins. There's a lot of interesting casting that went back and forth in this, because I think this was in develop. This was ready back in like the mid 80s and didn't actually get made till about a decade later.
They wrote it in 1984, and even though they weren't names yet, they had the chutzpah to court Paul Newman for the part of Sidney Musburger. And Paul Newman says, I don't really do that type of comedy, but I think you got something really funny here. You should keep pursuing it. Mm-hmm. And so Paul Newman didn't want anything to do with it. And 10 years later, when they're finally getting into production, they harassed him again for it, but they actually went after Clint Eastwood first, and I think Clint Eastwood would have also been an interesting choice, but I do love Paul Newman here.
Mm-hmm.
I think Paul Newman's very crusty in it. He has that croaky voice, but so does Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood would have that "make my day" with a cigar in his mouth type of performance. Clint Eastwood would probably look good in a suit in this one. But I think Paul Newman's eye rolling is very funny in it. I think it's funny, this was going to be the Coen brothers' first big production, and Joel Silver would help them get this made after Joel Silver saw Barton Fink in 1991.
Okay.
So Barton Fink was their fourth movie, and so the Coen brothers were stepping up to the plate for their first big potential box office production, big production that could possibly be a big box office smash. Joel Silver wanted Tom Cruise. I think that's kind of scary. I think I love Tom Cruise. He's one of my favorite actors, but there's something about that squeaky clean image and the Tom Cruise naivete that he would have brought to it, but also like love me, I'm an endearing character that there's something very touching about Tim Robbins' lack of ability of understanding the complete situation. That's very funny about Tim Robbins, that he is this big doofus that doesn't really get the whole picture. I think that's much funnier than anything Tom Cruise would have done with it.
Nice. And this is one of the few Coen brother movies that was not actually edited by them. Found that pretty good because they are pretty controlling over most of their other projects, I believe.
Who was the editor on this one?
Ooh, I'd have to look into that.
It is a beautifully edited movie, I'll tell you that.
Next one I had was Jennifer Jason Leigh won the role over Ellen Barkin, Nicole Kidman, Winona Ryder, and Bridget Fonda.
I would have liked Bridget Fonda in it, but Jennifer Jason Leigh was the best one. And we know she's going after the Rosalind Russell of His Girl Friday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got that vibe for sure.
Yeah. And it's fantastic what she does with it. She's a real motor mouth in it. She's great.
Yeah, fast-talking, smart gal in that misogynistic newsroom. Yeah, that's absolutely this movie.
Perfect name for her character, Amy Archer,
Okay. All right. And the last one, as of 2020, this is the only PG-rated movie directed by the Coens. Everything else is R and PG-13. But that doesn't necessarily make it a kids' movie, which I kind of, I'll get to next. All right. Before we talk... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that one of the big lines is, "Yes, sir, this is my ticket upstairs," for kids.
Yeah.
Because he creates the hula hoop, for kids.
Yep.
But it's funny. It never occurred to me that this was the early PG movie. I guess Oh Brother, Where Art Thou was PG-13 or something.
I guess so. Yeah, that sounds about right. I'm not sure how dark that one gets. Thinking back on it.
I guess Intolerable Cruelty was also another PG-13.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't think the Coen brothers set out to make, we got to make a PG movie. I think they just set out to make whatever they want to make.
Yeah, that sounds more their speed.
Let the rating system take care of itself.
And this was edited by
Tom Noble.
Tom Noble. Okay. Oh, Deacon shot it.
Edited,
nice. That makes sense.
Deacon shot it. Tom Noble was the editor for Witness with Harrison Ford. So if the Hudsucker Proxy looks and is cut as well as every other Coen Brothers movie, it's because Tom Noble is pretty good at what he does too. Roger Deakins. This is the most beautifully shot comedy that I have ever seen. Even the snowfall in the opening shots is a godsend. Everything about the way this movie looks is just so gorgeous to drink in. I mean, it's also another one of the other aspects I love is the Carter Burwell score. It's this very lush, big score. It's a champagne score.
Okay.
It's almost as if it's a champagne. You're toasting champagne to celebrate. It's such a lovely score. You just want to celebrate when you watch this movie.
Now, I did hear that is somewhat of a kids movie, so I had my middle son watch it, and he said he enjoyed it well enough. We'll get into more why in a minute. I didn't know anything about it. I've actually slowed down quite a bit on my movie watching. I was on vacation, was mostly watching Simpsons. So going into a movie that I knew nothing about, definitely had that new movie hesitation, as it were. What was your experience like, and how many times have you seen it?
I've seen it 7 or 8 times over the years. I saw it opening weekend in 1994. Like I said, it was a favorite movie from the beginning. I always thought it was one of the best films of 1994. It's only grown with me over the years. I just never really understood why it didn't catch on as a classic. It's never been rediscovered. One of the problems is that it hadn't quite entered the DVD era phase. And DVDs were really catching on in 98, 99?
Yeah, that's right.
And, this was a 1994 film.
Flopped.
It was a flop. $40 million budget with $2.8 million of box office receipts for that year. And, it would just kind of, it found its way on the home video cassettes, VHS tapes. And it would take several more years before it would find its way onto DVD. And the Coen brothers were making such legitimately great movies that were catching on that their other movies became more famous than Hudsucker.
It's almost a shame that Miller's Crossing got the Criterion treatment over this. I think I would have preferred this getting that accolade.
Oh, I agree, absolutely. Miller's Crossing is not my favorite Coen Brothers movie. I think it's very convoluted. There are so many character names that they bring up in Miller's Crossing that it just doesn't make sense. And you're supposed to follow who these characters are. They have characters in Miller Crossing that are Casper, Bernie, the Dane, Tad, Rug, Tic Tac, Mink, and it's hard to keep track of these people when we haven't even met these characters.
Okay.
There are some great shots in Miller's Crossing, such as the fedora flying through the forest.
Yep.
Or a second shot of there's another sequence when John Turturro is pleading for his life. And that is such a beautifully acted sequence. But Miller's Crossing, if the Coen brothers have ever been criticized for anything, it's for their coldness in their movies. I think Miller's Crossing is the movie that's too cold for its own good. And The Tragedy of Macbeth, the recent one, was another movie that was too cold for its own good. Too detached. As beautiful as the images are, it's just hard to connect with it. And those are actually my third favorite filmmakers, but those are their two weakest movies, in my opinion.
Cool.
And so I would definitely prefer Hudsucker Proxy get a Criterion Collection treatment over some of their other works.
All right, and so this was my what stood out most to me. It kind of felt like a twist on the Prince and the Pauper kind of story, with plenty of that zany Coen style, and it actually turns into somewhat of a live-action cartoon at times. So, despite the fact that you've seen this 7-8 times, anything kind of new pop out to you this time?
Always listening a little bit more carefully to what was it, Buzz the Elevator Boy.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Buzz,
a
make the
rapid talker
elevator
as well.
do what it does. Yeah, and he has all these jokes, and it's like one character wants to go down to the 36th floor, and he's rhyming, "I'm taking you to the 37th. I'm on the 36th. Walk down." I think his dialogue is hilarious. So there's all these other little characters, and then you pay attention to even Steve Buscemi a little bit more, who is this beatnik bartender towards the end of the movie.
That's a strange little element there.
It's a strange element, and he's sort of like the hip character for 1959.
Oh, absolutely. He has a much different feel.
He has a much different feel, and even the production design for that little beatnik bar is it's very quaint, but it's very fresh looking. I imagine that's what a beatnik bar would really look like in 1959. And there's something melancholy yet very touching about Norville Barnes and Amy Archer having their scene together in that beatnik bar, and Norville Barnes is very, very drunk, and he's at the end of his rope, and Amy Archer is trying to talk some goodwill back into him.
Okay. And the last little heading here, what surprised me most about this is with such a good film as it is, it kind of gets under my skin that Tim Robbins' character Norville goes into this like corrupted, comfy position where he's after the success of the hula hoop, which we'll get into, all of a sudden he's high and mighty and wants to be compensated for his accolades. So I was kind of surprised that they went that direction so quickly. But anything surprise you about this watch?
No, I actually love those scenes because he is sort of he's lovable, and yet he is a bit of an imbecile. It goes to his head so quickly. I find that so hilarious that he's ready to turn. He's ready to turn on the people that are closest to him, because he's had one success all of a sudden. And then I love it when there's this massage device by one of his secretaries.
Yeah, these are weird silver-looking things. Yeah.
Yeah, these silver massage gloves that they use on him. I think that's pretty hysterical. And
the big old cucumbers in his eyes.
Yeah. I would say the only part that's gotten tired to me, only because I've seen 7 or 8 times, is when he does his Muncie University college dance.
Yeah, root. Yeah. Okay, now I got so that we're gonna go kind of through the story here, and I'm gonna talk about some of the notes, and let's get into it some. So this could actually be one of the few New Year's Eve movies you could probably pop on. At least one big New Year's scene, right?
It's probably my favorite New Year's Eve movie.
Okay.
It's also my favorite Christmas movie. I mean, just the whole December feel to it. The snowfall is so beautiful in the movie. It's a total gorgeous December movie.
Yes, so speaking of the snowfall and that opening scene, I was getting some major Batman Returns vibes out of how the city looks and how the snow is, falling, and how it has kind of that cautionary tale. You get Tim Burton vibes out of this at all?
No, those are 2 excellent movies, by the way. It's Tim Burton's best Batman movie. Well, we only made 2, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It never occurred to me that the Coen brothers had this stewing for 10 years. I don't think they were trying to rip off anybody.
Sure,
this is not a copycat
similarities
job.
Noticed.
Similarities, but I also think there's still something of a difference, though. I think there's more of a film noir vibe to Tim Burton's Christmas feel.
Oh, okay.
And the Coen brothers does feel like the let's pop some champagne under the snowfall type of movie. There's just a romanticism of the way the snow falls in their movie that makes it special, in my opinion.
Nice. And I was really glad I flipped back through the movie because I didn't even realize that's what Norville there on the ledge. That's kind of a bit of a flash forward before we get in the actual plot. So it's always cool to notice those things on the back end. Even his briefcase has that Muncie College and the whole eagle hand thing that him and Amy start bonding off of eventually. I got a real big kick out of that mechanical job board. I'm not sure if those really exist, but I kind of imagine those in like an airport terminal as he was seeing all the stuff he was not qualified for. And I enjoyed that about the theme of the one of the themes of the movie being kind of the absurdity of not being qualified for anything, even though you've gone to college. And, how do you get these corporate jobs if you're so-called not qualified? You got to know somebody, right?
It says something about 1959. that even back then you had difficulty hopping on the springboard into a good job. It was just as difficult then as it is now. I also love that job board, the flipping panels of the job board. I think the Coen brothers are saying they had some kind of a job board like that somewhere at some point. And I'm glad those type of things are resurrected. I love it when something like that happens. Like, there's a scene in Dark City by Alex Proyas where it's a food. It's like a laundromat, but with food. There's they have these food panels, and I don't know, do you remember that scene in Dark City?
No, I'm blanking on that part, but
it's towards the beginning of the movie, but it's just I forget what they were called, but it's like those type of things in the past existed. I love it when filmmakers sort of bring up something that was an artifact that we wouldn't see otherwise.
Paused on the shot of the was it the coffee ring on the newspaper, and it says what low pay, long hours, no experience. The future's here at Hudsucker. So already some great comedy getting infused here. As I think that newspaper basically chases after him, right?
Yeah, it does. It's funny what the Coen brothers can do with wind machines, but they really seem to have a knack for it.
Oh, good point.
The flying fedora and Miller's Crossing, that's their best shot. There's so much of that in the Hudsucker Proxy, and I think there's a little bit of that too in the Big Lebowski, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I did see some similarities between this and Lebowski for sure. I love that parallel between Hudsucker, jumping out the window, and Norville just happening to enter right at the same time. That's timed so well and good stuff. Let's see. Oh yeah, when Hudsucker falls, that basically is our little clue in that this is basically we're gonna have moments of live action Looney Tunes, which is pretty fun. What do you? It's been a long time since I've seen Raising Arizona, so what would you say is the zanier of the two? Because those are their two silliest movies, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would say. I
mean, Burn After Reading's kind of up there too.
The screwball in Raising Arizona is really radical. It's really a Woody Woodpecker cartoon. And it's probably the zanier of the two. And I do love Raising Arizona. It's probably my 7th favorite Coen Brothers movie, and Hudsucker Proxy is my 3rd. Raising Arizona is really, really rapid fire and fast paced. It's amazing how much they really do in the first 15 minutes of Raising Arizona. There's so much. There's so much. There's like a short. There's a little story too that just really set the whole movie up, and it's all rapid pace, to really get us going. It's very zany.
It's remarkable that they're. What they win the Oscar for No Country for Old Men, which is such a different film, and then they have these more quirky things. Ballad of Buster Scruggs is some good comedy in there, and then you got the dark comedy. So
like a
I definitely enjoy
yeah.
Definitely, as one of them said, that they enjoy being left alone in their sandbox to play, and we certainly enjoy watching what they come up with.
Yeah, that's what I love about the Coen brothers, and it's amazing that they would make Burn After Reading right after No Country for Old Men, and it's a very spry movie. It's just they're not trying to outdo themselves, but it's just the willingness to just sort of let the comedy play out in a drawl pace is very, and it turns out very, very funny in Burn After Reading. There's a lot of accidental meetings and commotions and run-ins in Burn After Reading, and a lot of characters not understanding of what's going on. The characters are in the dark in Burn After Reading. It's a very witty movie. But if you actually look back at it, they actually were preparing Burn After Reading before No Country for Old Men, but it fell through. But probably their more personal movie, because they won the Oscar for No Country for Old Men, it led them to make A Serious Man. That was important to them, as they wanted to say something about their Jewish roots. And it's
Oh,
a
right.
very
That's
interesting.
okay.
It's a very interesting black comedy. I think
Okay.
it's also that one's also one of their best.
Yeah, that I was getting that confused with. Was it The Man Who Wasn't There? Yeah, Serious Man. Excellent, excellent. Yeah, portrayal of more of a biblical story. I wanted to get into the boardroom. Any initial thoughts of like those characters, the look of it? I thought it was hilarious. As soon as Hudsucker jumps out the window, they start talking about what's going to happen to the stock.
Yes, and it's all that Preston Sturges type of dialogue. And I love the production design of the entire office. It is a dream of a boardroom, and all these white-haired, old men in their 50s and 60s talking about the stock and how it's going to depreciate, or what they really need to do is really depreciate the stock so they can buy it up themselves. And that's the whole plot, is to get an imbecile to take over as president. Mm-hmm. Enter Norville Barnes, but a lot of it's Paul Newman's idea, and I love how they're shooting words off of each other. And it's like Warren Hudsucker never did things the easy way, and he dropped down 45 floors, including the mezzanine.
Love how you quote me.
And they keep going back and forth about 44 floors or 45 floors, and there's a mezzanine. Is it 45? Is it 44? Mm-hmm. And it's hysterical how they're technically playing off of words off of each other. So very funny scene.
Also, like the some of the scenes of like the workers on the work floor was definitely giving me some Brazil vibes, especially the part I think where they were following like a message going through a tube at one point, and yeah, I enjoyed seeing.
The pneumatic tubes. In order to send something to another office inside the company, you'd shoot a mail message inside this plastic tube. It would shoot up in an air duct, a pneumatic tube, and go to the other part of the building. Yeah. I actually do think it's like Brazil in the early scenes in the mailroom when Norville Barnes first gets his job. Mm-hmm. And they're talking about how they're going to dock his pay for every time he's late, or if he's a minute late to work, or if he routes a package to the wrong person, how he's going to have his pay docked. That's very Brazil.
I want to get your thoughts on this circle. I know this has to be a bigger deal in the movie than what I'm realizing now, but it's just such a generic thing. What do you make of the circle?
A circle is a circle, but it's a perfectly drawn circle, but it's all in Norville Barnes' head what it is. A circle could be anything, and so people are looking at him cross-eyed. It's like, what do you really have here? You're not really saying anything, and so he has this brilliant idea of the hula hoop. And is it really a brilliant idea? He could barely express what he wants to really do with the circle. He doesn't really know. He doesn't know how to say what it actually is. And so it's sort of a mystery for like 45 minutes. What is this circle? So what?
Yeah.
And so maybe he's not so dumb after all when it finally is revealed. This is what the circle is. It's a hula hoop. Mm-hmm. But they're just the Coen brothers are just playing around with it a little bit by using Tim Robbins' big goofy grin and his sort of naivete, and you think, well, this guy is too stupid to come up with anything, and before you know it, he actually does come up with something. He comes up with the hula hoop.
Does this movie make you think of The Apartment at all?
No, not really. No, admittedly, I haven't seen The Apartment since my early teens. The Apartment's one of those movies I saw 3 or 4 times right away when I was a kid discovering movies, and then for whatever reason, haven't seen it since.
That whole idea of climbing up the corporate structure, it was kind of reminding me of that. A little bit more recent in my memory. The very important blue letter in Newman's character, his tragic error as he does. Well, I guess. Well, shoot. Norville kind of Well, he pitches his circle idea instead of even mentioning the letter, right?
What is that? Can you repeat?
Okay, so the whole reason Norville gets in his office is because the blue letter, right? Which turns out to be Hudsucker's dying wishes, and so he gets all. Everybody's make sure he gets all the way up to the office, and I was just noting that was basically Newman's tragic flaws. I guess he doesn't get the letter.
He never actually opens the letter, and it never actually ends up in his hands. Ends up in Norville's mail apron. He tries to extend a letter to him, but it never gets to him. Instead, Norville Barnes tries to pitch him an idea, and he comes off as an imbecile. Paul Newman says, "Wait a minute." Norville Barnes is exactly the guy he's looking for.
Yeah,
and then there's this hilarious sight gag where Norville Barnes accidentally sets fire to the office, and he's trying to put out a fire by getting a water cooler.
Which he picks up upside down.
And the fire doesn't actually... He stumbles around with a garbage can that's on fire connected to his foot, and chaos ensues. And anyway, the plot eventually kicks its gears and gets on its way.
Just love all the small nuances throughout this thing. Like the secretary, she has this huge bow and this appointment book that's ginormous, and she's like, "You're not in it." Those people that know their job so well, and not getting by them, but that blue letter does. I think one of the reasons I mentioned Miller's Crossing a little earlier is with this 50s setting and the big open spaces in these buildings. The room's very spacious. I was kind of get similar visual vibes. Anything there, you think?
Well, the taller the ceilings, the wider the rooms. I don't know, the more chance for gorgeous movie making you can make. Remember, Paul Newman's office has that clock on the other side of the window. So you have the big hands of the corporate clock that are turning as they're sitting in that office. It's amazing production design work. Like every little aspect of the building is amazingly well put together.
And even their small little digressions. So when he ends up getting almost falling out the window, Norville catches him, and then his pant leg starts to rip, and they go into this whole little backstory about, I don't need a double seam. A single seam will do fine, but then the seamstress does the double seam on the back of the pant leg anyways to save his life. So a little moral doesn't pay to be cheap.
Yeah, I know. The Coen brothers' clever flashback right there. How they cleverly just go back into a quick flashback and then back forward to how this bad stitching is going to possibly lead Paul Newman to fall down 45 floors, or how many floors it is. Very funny scene.
The first movie I think of with Jennifer Jason Leigh is usually Hateful Eight, where she plays, real nasty character there. So this was actually one, I didn't realize it was her while I was watching it, and I was like, oh, that's such a delightful actress there, and it blew my mind that, Jennifer Jason Leigh really dolled up for this.
Oh, yeah, she has the hairstyle, and she's such a fast talker, and I know she really disappears into the role. She's a very versatile actress. I've enjoyed her performances in As Extends and Shortcuts, and she's very good in a movie called Georgia, even though the movie's not completely successful. She's very vulnerable in her breakout movie, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. She's always done good work.
I think one of my favorite scenes is this whenever Norville and Amy are sitting in this I think they're at a cafe, and then these two drivers are openly talking about how they're working on each other a little bit. That was great writing.
Yeah, it's the Coen brothers coming up with a different approach to a scene than a normal filmmaker would come up with. Mm-hmm. I mean, you could have literal dialogue between the two main leads, or you can have two other people sort of as a chorus commenting on what's going on. And there's something very droll and clever about that.
Of course, with Raimi being involved, Bruce Campbell has to be there too. Although I didn't get much out of him in this one. He's a little downplayed, in my opinion.
Oh, we only need him in there for a couple of minutes, and I think physically he's the right guy for the movie. And I also love another small role by Peter Gallagher as this boozing crooner who gets up on stage during the Hudsucker Christmas party, and he has a drink in his hand. You remember Peter Gallagher, right?
I'll have to look that part up. The only part that's coming to mind on stage is there's like an Elvis singer. That's different, right?
But that is Peter Gallagher.
Oh, okay. Okay, so we're on the same page. Okay. All right. Great scene there where Norvell's reading the imbecile headline and openly criticizing Amy's article without having a clue that that's her. So that's some good back and forth writing there with the dramatic conceit of everyone in the knows that that's her except for him.
Yeah.
Of course, we go. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, typical identity. There's an identity gap there where the main character can't see that the real person right in front of him is the person he should have known all along. Yeah, you get that a lot of movies, but it's really, really funny the way it's done in Hudsucker Proxy because Norville Barnes is so naive. That's the sweet part about it.
A little bit of a trope there with the old black man who runs the bell tower, but what a good scene! Like whenever he basically tells Amy that she really just needs to chill out.
Yeah, he. Of course, it's almost as if he lives in that bell tower and never goes home.
Yeah,
and he's actually, you recognize the voice. He is the narrator of the opening and close of the movie.
Gotcha.
I forget the actor's name. It was.
And it's strange in that big critical moment towards.
Bill Cobbs. Bill Cobbs was the actor.
Okay.
But yeah, I think we've probably seen him in a bunch of movies, but we can't really place him. But in Hudsucker Proxy, he seems to be the one all-knowing. He's the black character that will never be appreciated because it's the 50s and he's black and you can't be appreciated if you're black in the 50s. But he seems to know everything. He needs to know all the secrets of Hudsucker, of all the industry secrets. And he seems to know all the secrets to life on top of it. And so he gives Amy Archer some worldly advice on how to handle her situation.
I love the juxtaposition we get where we see the blueprint of the hula hoop, and it's what labeled as an extruded plastic dingus. and then it's passed over to the people in the company, and it gets super complicated all of a sudden with hundreds of stamps of approval and algorithms, and then they send naming it to the creative bullpen as the secretary reads Anna Karenina outside. Such goofy, great touches.
And Anna Karenina and World of War and Peace. And there's I think another third very, very long book. To sort of convey the idea that they've been working on this for an entire month, it seems like. Very funny, very, very, very funny stuff because it says how bureaucratic a corporation would actually be in the 50s to take that many stamps of approval on one hula hoop.
I was really surprised by a lot of the big classical musical hits throughout this. I'd have to watch back and kind of key in on that Champagne score you had mentioned, but yeah, the big classical music hits were what stood out to me, especially in that scene where the hula hoop finally does catch on, and we get this prodigy of a hula hooper demoing it to all the kids.
I know, the one kid that knows what he's doing with the hula hoop, and then it catches on. Then there's hula hoop fever sweeping across America because of one kid that knows what he's doing with the hula hoop. Very funny.
And right before that, they show the price go all the way down to, we'll give you one of these things free with your purchase.
2 for 25 cents.
Yeah.
Free with any purchase. Yeah, and then they start smacking on the price again. $1.49, $2.99, $3.99.
Yep. I really appreciated the old black and white newsreel scenes. They're showing how like the hula hoop is catching on, and in Norville, that he's the success behind it all. It makes me think of like how cable television's kind of dying. So kids these days aren't watching these old like History Channel black and white newsreel kind of stuff. So I mean, this is going to be completely foreign to folks in the future, because I mean, you just don't see that kind of that old style newsreel anymore. Yeah.
Good point. There's going to be a few kids out there that watch the Hudsucker Proxy that don't understand those scenes with the newsreel. Yeah. But at least we know they were there, right? At least you and me know they were there.
Yeah. Let's see. The whole plan backfires on the board because the hula hoop's a success, but they can't jump anymore because they got plexiglass. That was a good scene. And then finally that Lebowski reference. Well, not reference, but when Norville's dreaming that he's dancing with this Latina girl in this completely whited out dream sequence. Not the first. Well, I guess that would be the first time. Well, what I'm trying to say is the fact that we have the marvelous Lebowski dance in this dream sequence. So that wasn't the first time they did it.
Yeah, Tim Robbins really geeks out in that scene. We have this beautiful woman doing this lovely dance, and then it's a fantasy scene, and then Tim Robbins comes in there invading the space of this beautiful dancer, and he just sticks out like a sore thumb. And that's the humor, that's the joke. And it's just there to get a laugh.
Yeah.
I love what the Coen brothers can do with a scene like that. It doesn't have to be there, and yet it does, because it is funny. And
then this is the part where I was kind of telling you I was annoyed that he gets corrupted so quickly. And then the elevator guy pitches his own circle, but it's not a hula hoop this time. It's a straw, and I guess a doohickey.
Yeah.
And it's either the fact that he just can't wrap his mind about his circle being something else, or he is ticked off that somebody's trying to use the same tactic for success. But it does not go well with him. And did you have anything on that point?
Well, that's part of the message of the movie, and his temporary downfall is the fact that he's now closed-minded to anybody else that could actually have an idea. That he's ready to turn his back on the people that knew him first. Yeah,
where he was just not too long ago, as we go in our little third act slump with him being accused of stealing the idea, being labeled as insane by the board. So leading up to that big chase where they're chasing him through the streets, which is, it's funny that it culminates in that. Really cool to see Anna Nicole Smith, and I guess this was her debut performance. Not sure how many movies she was in, but she looked so much like Marilyn, and unfortunately had a very quick demise as well, huh?
Yeah, the Coen brothers gave her a few lines. That's nice of them. It could have been a silent performance by Anna Nicole Smith, but she finally gets to say something. Just needed a buxom blonde in there. She becomes Norville Barnes' girlfriend for a few moments, and and you can't imagine these two having a private life together. That's what's so funny about the matchup. But it's completely, the relationship between them is complete spectacle. And that's another indicator how high success has gone to his head.
There's a couple more points here. I never saw the whole time freeze coming a mile away, as the crowd chases him up and he's all the way up in his office and makes the jump, and all of a sudden time freezes, and he gets a little talk from Hudsucker with his circle halo above his head reminds us back to that part as he explain he's essentially that element of the film that just pops up all of a sudden and is there to solve the problems, right?
Yeah, it's a fresh way. It's a comedy. The movie's a comedy. It's a fresh way of the Coen brothers dealing with something that can only happen in the movies, and we ought to have a little bit more of that in our comedies. This is about the Coen brothers playing with time, and they can reinvent. You can invent anything you want to do in a comedy, and make your own rules, because there are no rules when it comes to movie making. Yet so many other filmmakers are so rigid. They think they have to apply these certain principles in order for something to work. And the Coen brothers just take risks. They take risks at how they can tell a story and what they can do with resolving a story, which is very funny and interesting here. Because, they freeze time while Norval Barnes is in midair.
Yeah. Oh, and then as we wrap the movie up, Sydney goes nutty and Norville's about to launch the frisbee, and the guy jumping out of the store, the whatever story above that, that's a whole nother story as the movie wraps up. Yeah, a whole nother
story. And it's Never Successful Dingus are brought to you by the mind of Norval Barnes. That's a perfect frisbee throw, by the way, by Tim Robbins. As the camera's backing out through the window, and the frisbee comes right out that window, and we see the building, and then there's a nice cut where we see a wider shot of the whole beautiful building, and we get that story. It bookends itself, and we know that Norval Barnes is going to be a permanent success at the company.
All right, so I'll let you have the honors. I know you love this one quite a bit, so wrap it up, what you love about it, and your rating, if you could.
5 stars. It is my third favorite Coen Brothers movie out of the 20 that I've seen. I think there's only been 20 movies by them. It just misses my top 100, but there are some days where I wonder, can I squeeze it onto my top 100 of all time? I love this comedy. It had been a few years since I'd last seen it, but it is the perfect Christmas, New Year's Eve movie for me. I think it's just like it's even better than the Preston Sturges movies of the 40s, with the exception of The Lady Eve. This is great screwball comedy. It's a farce. They take tremendous risk here. It's really a beautiful eyeful. It's amazing how much visual beauty the Coen brothers can get away with in 2 hours. I love the Hudsucker Proxy, and it should be as famous as Lebowski, in my opinion. So
awesome. I would wrap it up by saying I think this is an exceptional workplace comedy. Lots of great flair and great cleverness from the Coens, bringing back that 50s vibe throughout with their cheeky style, kind of wrapped in a familiar package. I'm kind of teetering between a 4 and a 4.5. The things that I did grieve about the film or complain about the film, you kind of noted how you kind of crack up at those parts. So something to rethink. It's fun to point out something. Oh, I didn't quite like that, but then look at it a whole nother way. It's so awesome doing this show and meet so many really smart people that love movies just as much as I do. And it was really cool hearing about your whole background in LA, getting to meet people. So thanks so much for joining me. Are any socials or that you want to shout out? How do people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Flick Minutes. You can find me as Chavel at Letterboxer, and just hit me up and talk to me. And I'd love to hear more from anybody about their reactions to Hudsucker Proxy. I think it's a comedy that works on, it's such a fast-moving comedy, it works on all cylinders. If you watch it a second time, you'll just see how fast and readily this thing moves. It's an amazing piece of work, and it's so much fun.
Awesome. All right, please follow us on the Average Joe's Movie Club cast on YouTube and look for my reviews on Letterboxd. I'm Justin Peterson. Have a great day, everyone, and keep watching great movies. Bye.